In 2014, Disney looked at 40 years of Star Wars storytelling. The Yuuzhan Vong invasion, Jason Solo's fall to the dark side, the Abeloth crisis,
Ugh.
and declared it didn't happen. But here's what they didn't count on. The fans decided Disney doesn't get to make that call. The expanded universe represents the legitimate continuation of Star Wars. And the fandom's rejection of Disney's Legends rebranding isn't nostalgia. It's quality control from an audience that watched a corporation delete superior storytelling to replace it with the sequel trilogy. The sheer
Didn't even
scale
do
of what
anything.
existed before the corporate axe fell was unprecedented in modern fiction. Alan Dean Foster's Splinter of the Mind's Eye hit shelves in 1978. A slim paperback originally conceived as a low-budget sequel contingency in case the first film flopped. The film didn't flop. What followed was one of the most extraordinary experiments in collaborative fiction ever attempted. Hundreds of authors, artists, and game
Star
designers
Wars
built
Legends
an
the whole
interlocking
time.
narrative tapestry.
New Republic, New Jedi Order, Legacy. Yeah, this is why everyone's going off the whole... What was it? BBY and ABY. You know, before Battle of Yavin and after Battle of Yavin. Because it's basically a new hope. The first Star Wars movie. We got before the Republic, 37,000 to 25,000. 37,000 to 25,000 years. They missed a zero there. Dawn of the Jedi, Into the Void, Old Republic, 5,000 to 67 years before Star Wars A New Hope. Rise of the Empire, 67 to 0 years before Star Wars A New Hope. Rebellion, 05 years after Star Wars A New Hope. New Republic, 5 to 25 years after Star Wars A New Hope. New Jedi Order, 25 to 40 years after Star Wars A New Hope. And of course, the Legacy, 40 plus years after Star Wars A New Hope.
Spanning
And man, we got a lot. We got the X-Wing, the Jedi, Children of the Jedi. What was the one that I know of? The New Jedi Order, Dark Tide, Force. Man, I can't remember the one that I have currently. It was like a 3-parter, I think. It's not... Definitely not Force Heretic. Maybe it is? I don't know. Dark Tide seems more obvious. Darth Plagueis. Cloak of Deception, Darth Maul, Shadowhunter. A lot of stuff, basically. That was the second panel. The first one is like way more extensive, as far as I can saw.
roughly 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin to 140 years after it. By the time that experiment was forcibly terminated, the expanded universe comprised thousands of pages of novels, hundreds of comic book issues published primarily through Dark Horse Comics.
And some were good, some were bad, but in the end it was like, you know, extended media. It was fun.
And multiple video game narratives, all operating within a shared continuity overseen by Lucasfilm's own internal database. Lucasfilm's internal continuity database was the engine behind that coherence, overseeing shared continuity across hundreds of publications and multiple decades of storytelling. This wasn't fan fiction. It was a managed literary ecosystem with institutional oversight. The real ignition point came in May 1991. Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire landed on bookshelves and reinvented Star Wars as a living literary franchise. Zahn introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn, the cold, calculating imperial strategist who studied his enemy's art to predict their tactics. He introduced Mara Jade, the former Emperor's hand, who'd eventually become Luke Skywalker's wife and one of the most beloved original characters in the entire franchise.
Crazy enough, I barely even know her. Aside from the fact that she's literally married to Luke, and the occasion of the fact that she was like the Emperor's personal right-hand man, woman, I guess. Nothing more from Mara Jade. She probably has some cool stories, but I've never touched upon them. Never cared to.
Buried within the diplomatic intrigue and military campaigns of the Thrawn trilogy was a quieter detail that would reverberate for decades. Leia Organa Solo was pregnant with twins. Jason and Jaina Solo were born in the trilogy's conclusion, The Last Command, published in 1993. Jason arrived in 9 ABY, 5 minutes before his sister. An innocuous narrative beat at the time. Nobody could have predicted that his life, stretching from that moment across nearly 2 decades of real-world publishing, would become the single most compelling argument against everything Disney later did to this franchise. Zahn's trilogy didn't just launch a publishing phenomenon. It created a template for how the EU would operate. Other authors built on his foundation.
I mean, as far as I know from Zahn, they basically just... If you ever wondered what a good Kylo Ren would be like, that's pretty much what he is, in a sense. Just a way better Kylo Ren with a way well-handled empire. It's kind of shaky, but at the end of the day, I can't deny it was dope.
Hundreds of creators, novelists, comic book artists,
Dark Empire. The before the Palpatine Returns meme, we had this that actually had Palpatine return. And then we had the meme that returned him for real. Big difference is that one mishandled it terribly, where this one at the very least tried something fun.
Designers constructed narratives that extended far beyond the sky.
This kind of reminds me I should probably play the Old Republic. I have both of those games, but never went out of my way to play them.
Skywalker Solo Dynasty.
Should probably fix that.
The EU was deep enough to sustain characters who existed entirely outside the main saga's gravitational pull. Video games pushed the boundaries even further, building their own mythologies within the shared timeline. All of it interconnected, all of it maintained, all of it declared legends on a single April day.
I mean, to be fair, they also did some rewrites here and there, but yeah, they were trying to be consistent at least.
The post-Return of the Jedi era that the EU constructed looked nothing like the clean reset Disney's sequel trilogy delivered. A rebel alliance trying to transform itself into a legitimate government, while Imperial remnant forces fought a grinding rearguard action across the Outer Rim. That was the political landscape. Luke Skywalker established a new Jedi Academy on the jungle moon of Yavin 4, wrestling with how to rebuild an order that had catastrophically failed once before. Han and Leia navigated the impossible tension between military heroism and political leadership, raising their children, Jason, Jaina, and later Anakin Solo, in a galaxy that was rebuilding, but never truly at peace. Fans who picked up Heir to the Empire as teenagers in 1991 were reading Fate of the Jedi as adults in their 30s, having grown up alongside these characters. That was the answer to the question viewers still ask: what actually happened after the Ewok party? The EU built an entire civilization's worth of storytelling around that question, and millions of readers followed every step. Then, on October 30th, 2012, the Walt Disney Company acquired Lucasfilm Limited for $4.05 billion. A sequel trilogy was immediately greenlit, Episode 7 targeted for 2015. For the expanded universe community, the acquisition triggered one existential question: what happens to the continuity?
Man, look at that timeline shift. So we have, like, they still keep the stuff from probably the Old Republic, but, like, look at the difference between ages. So I should probably hide my avatar because she takes up the space, but look at this. So the middle point is definitely like Republic era. Where's our boy with the I'm assuming Empire era is somewhere around here, which is where episode 3 concludes somewhat. So this is kind of the middle ground. This is basically episode 4, or the first movie taking place. And you can just see the massive spike between, like, both years. One is basically prehistory, the Old Republic, Republic era, Imperial era, New Republic era, a war renewed, and thereafter. And it goes from like 35,000 all the way to 28 ABY. Meanwhile, you have Legends, which is like 14 billion years before the Battle of Yavin, all the way to 122 years after it, which is like huge span. And we got like what a pre-Republic era, expansion era, Great Manifestation period, Yindecta era, Kimudon era, Plus Dia era, Dictavus era, Rianitas period, Subterra period, Mandarin period, post-Mandarin period, Old Sith Wars, Inner Sith Wars period, Dragulch period, the Great Peace of the Republic, the Clone Wars, Imperial period, the Rebellion era after the Battle of Yavin. Crazy. So much stuff that they practically shove in there. It's nuts.
Decades of interconnected storytelling.
Now here it is, the novel timeline. Old Republics, 33. I'm assuming this is new canon? No, this is still Legacy. I find the one that I have, like... Maybe it was Force Heretic, and I'm just being a goober. Because it is a 3-parter. Oh, hey, look, the Force Unleashed even takes place. Han Solo Trilogy, Imperial Commando, 501st, X-Wing, Rogue Squadron, Wedge's Gamble, the Crypto Trap, the Counter Slayer. Yeah, even some of the games are here. Damn. They genuinely were trying to fit in everything.
Occupied the post-Return of the Jedi timeline, and the new films would need that same narrative real estate. Optimists hoped for adaptation. Maybe the Thrawn trilogy translated to screen. Maybe the Solo twins anchored the new saga. Pessimists braced for a clean slate. For 17 months, the community waited, scanning every interview, parsing every press release for signals. The signal came as a guillotine. April 25th, 2014. 2 years and nearly 6 months after the acquisition, a gap that underscores the premeditated nature of the decision, Lucasfilm announced that the expanded universe was being rebranded under a new
Legends.
label, Legends. Going forward, only the 6 theatrical films and the Clone Wars animated series would constitute official Star Wars canon. Everything else,
Bold.
every novel, every comic, every game narrative
Straight up
stretching from
bold.
1978 to 2014, was reclassified. The press release gestured toward respect, noting that several characters and vehicles introduced in the EU had already formed part of Star Wars' cultural fabric. The underlying message was unmistakable. None of it counted anymore. Disney had convened a story group at Lucasfilm to manage canon going forward, and that group determined a clean slate served the new trilogy's creative needs better than inheriting 4 decades of continuity obligations.
Here we are in 2026, and the big question is, why'd you do it? Why didn't you just adapt the stuff? Would have been fun. But no, you just had to make room for something new that ultimately didn't deliver anything. You know, if you fumble hard enough to the point where it's terrible, people will remember it, or if it's like interesting to the point of discussion, it's also interesting. But overperforming, under-delivering, and subsequently being so forgettable that no one would care afterwards? Yeah, no. The big question was, they fumbled so hard. The big question really is, why didn't you just adapt the books and anything else from the series so far?
J.J. Abrams and his collaborators wanted creative freedom. The EU's post-Endor timeline was densely populated. Han and Leia married with 3 children. Luke married to Mara Jade. The New Republic reshaped by multiple galactic crises.
Yeah,
The Jedi Order
to make
rebuilt
it
from
interesting.
scratch. Honoring all of this while remaining accessible to general audiences would have been a monumental challenge. So they wiped the slate. Millions of invested readers experienced the announcement as erasure. A corporation telling them
Because
the
it
books
is.
on their shelves had been officially downgraded to someone else's fanfiction. What made the timing particularly savage was the state of the EU at the moment the axe fell. Fate of the Jedi had concluded just 2 years earlier, with significant narrative threads left deliberately unresolved. Troy Denning's Crucible, published in 2013, the last novel to feature Luke, Han, and Leia within the Legends timeline, wasn't a farewell. Stories were being planned. Authors were under contract.
Man, it must have like really sucked. Imagine like having the chance to make a novel about Star Wars and they basically just take the guillotine, slash it in front of your face and tell you, well, your work is non-canon. Like that's gotta be such a gut punch. Like straight up devastating. You're probably planning like some awesome stories to build upon the various breadcrumbs the other writers were feeding along the way, and like, you know, a genuine community of interactions, and basically to be told, nah, you cease this operation right now. Straight up, it's like they gave us the Death Star, but they only completed it 50%. And it's like, man, what do you mean I have to stop? I didn't even get to finish it and blow up a planet. So dumb.
The community was actively engaged with ongoing narratives. The EU wasn't winding down. It was mid-sentence. And the scale of what was amputated spanned 37 years of interconnected storytelling.
Sheesh.
Every literary tradition has weak entries. The Crystal Star remains a perpetual punchline. But you don't burn
Never
a
heard of it.
library because a few
Or is it the one with the Kyber crystal?
books are bad. The EU's peaks were some of the most ambitious long-form storytelling in popular fiction, and 3 arcs in particular stand as prosecutorial exhibits against the decision to bury them. Jason Solo's story is the crown jewel, and it demands to be understood in full because nothing Disney has produced since comes close. Jason was a presence in the EU before he drew his first breath, felt through Leia's pregnancy in Heir to the Empire in May 1991. Through Kevin J. Anderson's Young Jedi Knights series in the mid-1990s,
Cool,
readers
Mark.
met him as a teenager, animal-loving, philosophically inclined. He'd rather commune with creatures through the Force than swing a lightsaber. Gentler than his adventurous sister Jaina, gentler than his gifted younger brother Anakin. Readers who picked up those books as young teenagers
Book
were growing up
collection.
alongside
Man,
him.
look at the smile on the guy's face. That's so dope. Him holding his collection and everything.
Matching age for age, year for year. Then came the Yuzan Vong War. Everything changed. The New Jedi Order series ran from 1999 to 2003 across 19 interconnected novels. A galaxy-spanning invasion by an extragalactic species that existed outside the Force, whose biotechnology and religious fanaticism made them unlike any threat Star Wars had ever faced. R.A. Salvatore's Vector Prime
were kinda
opened
dope.
the series by killing
Straight up like the equivalent of like, what was it? The Warhammer 40k Eldar mixed with like, I guess the Tyranids, I think. They kind of are like that in a sense, very prideful, very superiority complex and stuff, but also all focused on biological weapons and whatnot. They were kind of cool, very edgy, but given the fact that it came 1999 to 2003, do you expect anything else? That was basically primetime edge fest.
Chewbacca, crushed by a moon, crashing into the planet Cernpadal, while he ensured Anakin Solo escaped.
Honestly, still the best way for a character to kick the bucket. Of all the characters in Legends, Chewbacca is the only one who gets murked, and it's in the most badass way possible. Meanwhile, you get to the sequel trilogy, and all 3 of the main cast get murked in the most unremarkable ways. Han Solo stabbed with a lightsaber, Leia just fades, and Luke also kind of fades after having a quote-unquote talk with Kylo Ren. Like, again, Chewbacca getting nuked by a moon is like top 10 best top 10 best anime deaths.
Fan reaction ranged from devastation to fury, but the death established the rules. This was a story willing to wound its audience because the wounds served the narrative.
And keep in mind, it was the only character that kicked the bucket. a character that we kind of liked, but still one of the group, as opposed to like multiple.
For Jason, the war was a crucible in the most literal sense. Captured by the Yuzan Vong, subjected to prolonged captivity and torture, an ordeal chronicled most powerfully in Matthew Stover's Traitor, widely considered
Traitor.
one of the finest Star Wars novels ever written. Stover took Jason into a philosophical abyss, stripping away his certainties about the Force, about good and evil, about existence itself. He emerged transformed. Then, Troy Denning's Star by Star killed Jason's younger brother Anakin during a strike mission against the Vong in 2001.
Oh,
The boy who loved animals and philosophy had watched his galaxy invaded, been tortured by its conquerors, lost his brother, and stared into a void with no simple answers.
yeah.
Seeds of his fall, planted through accumulated trauma across years of storytelling. No shortcuts, no montages, just the slow accretion of damage that makes a person capable of terrible things. The fall itself came in Legacy of the Force, 9 novels published from 2006 to 2008 by Aaron Alston.
The fat Tusken Raider.
9 novels published from
That's such a visual. Like everyone was like stormtroopers and then the dark stormtrooper and then the fat Tusken Raider in the background.
2006 to 2008 by Aaron Alston, Karen
Sacrifice.
Travis, and Troy Denning. 15 years of publishing, harvested. Every relationship, every wound, every unanswered question brought to its terrible conclusion. Jason Solo, the gentle boy who talked to animals, became Darth Caedus. The transformation unfolded gradually, granularly, with a plausibility that made it all the more horrifying. He convinced himself the galaxy demanded a strong hand, rationalized every escalation, every betrayal, every act of violence as serving a greater good visible only to him. Each step deeper into darkness followed logically from the last. In May 2007, the novel Sacrifice delivered the defining act. Jason murdered Mara Jade Skywalker, his aunt, his mentor, Luke Skywalker's wife, to complete his ascension to Sith Lord. Mara Jade, introduced by Zahn in 1991 as the Emperor's Hand, had traveled one of the
That much
EU's
I
great
remember,
narrative
yeah.
arcs, from would-be assassin of Luke Skywalker to his wife and partner. She was arguably the most beloved original character the EU had ever produced. For Jason to kill her was for the EU to destroy something its readers cherished in service of a story about how good people become monsters. That emotional payload required decades of character investment to detonate. A single film couldn't manufacture it. A trilogy couldn't either.
Yeah?
Jason's arc ended in May 2008 with the novel Invincible.
It's kind of like, what was it? The whole ordeal of making a show versus a movie. On the one hand, the movie could be like shorter because it's like 2 hours and whatnot, can be condensed. But on the other hand, a show can give you like several episodes and more breathing room to expand upon these stuff. I guess the closest thing would be if they made a show with legends would be interesting and only focus on like key parts for movies. Like, you know, the spectacle for the big cinema, for the big screens. So you can yell absolute cinema. But they fumbled.
His twin sister Jaina killed him. She'd trained specifically for this, accepting that the boy she'd shared a womb with, grown up alongside, and fought beside in a galactic war was beyond saving. Readers who met Jason as an unborn child in 1991 watched his twin end his life in 2008. 17 years of real-world publishing. A generation of accumulated storytelling,
Nearly
earned
2
page by
decades
page.
of writing, damn.
Now compare. Disney gave us Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. His fall to the dark side happened off-screen,
Yep.
somewhere between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. No build-up across decades of publishing. No philosophical crisis readers followed from adolescence into adulthood. No specific trauma traced with patience through multiple series. A character who arrived
I mean, again, you're comparing a character that was made in the movies and wasn't expanded upon versus a character that was given full novelizations and like extensive time to basically be thoroughly examined and, even transitioned properly from light side to dark side in an interesting way. The big problem is they just kind of didn't focus on Kylo Ren at all. Like, he's kind of like Rey in a sense, where the big difference was that they just don't know how to handle their characters. They tried something in episode 7, but it was mishandled. Then you had episode 8, which then kind of went out of its way to be, I don't know, some kind of philosophical themes level discussion that did worse for him because it pretty much made the whole ordeal with him trying to execute others kind of eh. And then episode 9 was just like still the bad guy, but then all of a sudden, after the whole interaction with Rey and the what was it, the Han Solo moment in on the Death Star, it's like all of a sudden he's a good guy. Like, they could have handled it, but they didn't. Like, it still would have been simple, but it could have been handled well, and it could have been, interesting. But again, they fumbled. And again, you're comparing like a character who's been in 3 movies versus a character who's been given several novels. Kind of unfair given the fact that one has like way too much room to be expanded upon and, tons of text and discussions and whatnot to make him interesting, whereas like Kylo Ren just kind of movie bad guy that didn't get expanded upon and was constantly being thrown in the dirt. What exactly would he be thrown under? Not even a bus would compare to the amount of shade they threw at this character. Thrown under the Death Star, I guess? Sure, yeah.
Already Fallen, whose story across the sequel trilogy covered narrative ground that the EU had explored across dozens of novels, with exponentially more depth. Jason Solo's tragedy worked because readers had known him since before he was born. Kylo Ren's tragedy was told to the audience, a single flashback where a story should have been, a PowerPoint summary where the EU had given a lived experience. The Yuzan Vong invasion deserves its own testimony beyond its role in Jason's story. 19 novels across 4 years by multiple authors working within a shared framework. A genuine serialized war narrative tracking an alien invasion from initial incursions at the galaxy's edge to the fall of Coruscant itself. The Yuzan Vong broke every assumption Star Wars audiences had held since 1977. Organic biotechnology instead of machines. Pain worshipped as religious sacrament. They existed outside the Force.
Like I said, it was the edge phase. They were full-on edgelords. I mean, look at the armor just by itself. Straight up edgelord.
Meaning the Jedi couldn't sense them, couldn't predict them, couldn't rely on the metaphysical framework that had governed the franchise for decades. Coruscant, the galactic capital, the seat of civilization for millennia, was overrun and reshaped by alien terraforming into something grotesque and unrecognizable. No convenient superweapon to destroy, no single decisive battle to win, just attritional apocalypse that stripped away everything familiar, killed beloved characters, and left the galaxy permanently scarred when it finally ended. 19 volumes proved Star Wars could handle genuine, irreversible consequences at epic scale. Disney replaced all of it with the First Order, an unexplained imperial resurgence that reset the galaxy back to rebels versus empire with no coherent explanation of how the New Republic collapsed.
Yeah.
The sequel trilogy didn't just...
Worst part is, actually, they just kind of go over it real quick. It's just like, Rebels won, New Republic was made, and they just kind of... When they heard about the whole First Order, they didn't do anything. So the Resistance was just kind of built off of Leia just taking action. But it was like way worse somehow than the original Rebels. Hence why it's the Resistance. And the First Order is just like Empire 2.0, but the big question is how the hell did this Empire come to be? At least the first one had the whole factor that it ruled across an entire galaxy's worth of, you know, resources and planets. Meanwhile, this one is just like manifested out of thin air. It's like, where the hell did they come from? And then they just kind of destroyed the New Republic, and it's like, oh, there goes everything.
Ignore the EU's answer to what happened after Endor. It refused to offer a credible answer of its own. The Abeloth crisis cuts deepest of the three, because the 2014 canon wipe interrupted it mid-story. Abeloth was the primary antagonist of Fate of the Jedi, 9 novels published between March 2009 and April 2012 by Aaron Alston, Christy Golden, and Troy Denning. An entity of immense force power, connected to the Mortis arc and the Ones, primordial force wielders that the Clone Wars animated series had introduced.
I will say one thing, I never really cared much about Abeloth because, quite frankly, these guys and Abeloth are just headache-inducing. Like, so you have Anakin, who was like literally half Force, and then all of a sudden, he behold, gods of the Force, and it's like, sure, why not? Fine, whatever. It's like, I don't hate them existing, I just don't want to deal with them. I think the Clone Wars show did enough with them, and that was it. And Abeloth was just kind of like the surprise fourth god that was unintentionally made. And it's just like, maybe the stories, if I remember correctly, were kind of interesting, but still, it's like, we're talking about guys trying to fight against the closest equivalent to Star Wars is Warhammer 40k Chaos God. It's like, it's epic, but it's like, what? How'd we get here?
Abeloth predated the Sith, predated the Jedi, possibly predated the galaxy. 9 books built her menace, layering revelation upon revelation about her origins, her hunger, her dominion over the living force.
You gotta say, I prefer the other
Fate of the
fan arts
Jedi
where
concluded
she's
with
just
Apocalypse
normal, but
in April
with like
2012,
a jagged
and the ending
smile
deliberately left Abeloth's
going
ultimate
across
fate
her face.
ambiguous. That ambiguity was designed as a narrative bridge.
That image there
Cliffhanger meant
doesn't do
to
her
fuel
much
future books and
justice.
series. Plans existed.
It looks too
Outlines were
lanky and
drafted. Authors were gearing up. 6 months later,
It's like
Disney
she's-
acquired Lucasfilm. The Abeloth cliffhanger, designed as a bridge to stories still coming, became a tombstone instead.
Man, again, like I said, this gotta be like the biggest gut punch to everyone, both writers and readers. Like I said, I don't really read much about these stuff, but like, granted, there's definitely gonna be people that loved reading those books, and there are definitely writers who loved making them. So to literally have the entire operation be cut midway is like gotta be such a frustrating and agonizing experience. All that work that you were trying to build up to something probably epic, like on the equivalent of Warhammer 40k wrapping up levels of epic, just gets cut off midway. It's like, damn. Straight up damn.
Apocalypse was published just 6 months before the acquisition, meaning the 2014 canon wipe permanently froze the cliffhanger in amber. A completed story being decanonized insults its readers. An unfinished story being abandoned breaks a promise. One fan described the unresolved Abeloth arc with surgical precision. It still hurts. That pain lives in the specificity. Not a story ended, but a story stopped. Through all of this, the sequel trilogy offered Luke Skywalker as a hermit on an island who'd abandoned the galaxy. The EU's Luke built a Jedi Academy, married Mara Jade, raised a son, fought in multiple galactic crises, and remained the moral center of the franchise across decades of publishing. The sequel trilogy's characterization downgraded a richer, more fully realized version of the character that already existed in thousands of pages of published fiction.
I'd say more so it
The
didn't
same pattern
utilize
held
what it was
everywhere.
given.
The EU's complex New Republic replaced by an inexplicable First Order. Mara Jade erased entirely, her character arc vaporized. Decades of post-Endor history swapped for a narrative that reset the board to 1977 and called it innovation. So how did fans respond to the Legends decree?
Well, they should
They
get into the
ignored it.
expansive
The
universe.
community that grew up reading the EU didn't accept the rebranding. Fans launched hashtag campaigns. Petitions circulated.
I mean, to be fair, again, when you have such a rich history of characters, because back then they didn't even have like some of the comics to like go out of their way for, again, the whole old Republic and whatnot. Because if I remember correctly, when it was declared, literally everything gets cut out, not just like the books and everything, like video games and other media as well. Like it said, aside from the Clone Wars show, because why exactly they kept that as opposed to the 6 movies, I don't know. The Clone Wars show and the original trilogy and prequel trilogy were the only thing that was considered canon. That means everything connected with games and whatnot was just straight up erased. Old Republic, gone. The whole ordeal with Kyle Katarn and everything, gone. Oh, sorry about that. What else? Like games that took place in the original trilogy, gone. Stories that took place in the prequel era, gone. Like straight up everything that was building in, around, and after all the movies is just straight up erased. Like if I remember correctly, later on they made comics that basically canonized some of the stuff from Legends. Like I remember there was this comic about Darth Vader with the rat ghoul infection to basically kind of very loosely tie things from the Old Republic into the official canon, so that both are, relatively speaking, still following the exact same canon. But again, it's very confusing. They basically tried to erase everything from Legends, but then they doubled down. Not double down. They go back and try to snatch things from Legends and make it canon, which is like so weird in how they handled it. It's making me wonder what kind of thought process were those people in? What kind of biological weapon that gives you the ultimate high was unleashed on them to basically make them take those decisions?
Legends branded novels continued to sell, sustained by community evangelism and the stubborn reality that good stories don't expire because a press release says they're unofficial. Fan wikis maintained full Legends continuity with meticulous devotion, documenting every character, every
Wikipedia.
timeline entry, every cross-reference, with the dedication of archivists preserving manuscripts from a collapsing civilization. An entire parallel fandom persisted, treating the expanded universe as the true post-Return of the Jedi canon, regardless of what any corporate press release said. And the most telling evidence that Disney knows the EU carries gravitational pull they can't escape. They keep reaching back into it.
Yep.
Grand Admiral Thrawn was brought into the Rebels animated series, and later into live action with Ahsoka. Persistent rumors of Mara Jade's potential reintroduction into canon have surfaced. Plot elements, character types, and narrative structures from the
Wasn't there like the chick that was supposed to be Maul's apprentice also made canon? I don't know. I haven't watched Maul yet.
EU keep getting quietly recanonized, piece by piece, because the corporation that declared these stories apocryphal can't stop mining them for material.
Yeah.
Every recanonized element is an
Quite literally ironic. So ironic. It's not even worth pointing out the entire meme, but I'll do it anyway. He can save others from death, but not himself.
admission. Every borrowed character is a receipt. That April 2014 announcement tried to draw a line. Official canon on one side, legends on the other. But canon has never been something a press release bestows. Canon is what the audience carries with them after the last page turns, after the last credit rolls. Millions of readers spent decades inside the expanded universe. They grew up with Jason and Jaina Solo. They mourned Chewbacca on Cernpadal, and Anakin Solo during a desperate strike mission against the Yuuzhan Vong. They followed Mara Jade from assassin to wife and partner to murder victim. They waited for Abeloth's return, and they're still waiting. because no one was ever allowed to write the next chapter. Those stories live in the community, in the books still being bought and read and argued about, in the fact that Disney keeps reaching back into the material they declared dead because they can't build anything better. 37 years of storytelling. From 1970.
Imagine being so creatively bankrupt. You literally go back to the thing you labeled non-canon and trying to make it canon. It's not even funny at this point.
77 to the canon wipe in 2014. Thousands of pages of novels, hundreds of comics, video games that built their own mythologies within the shared timeline. A universe maintained by a dedicated continuity database, constructed by hundreds of creators and sustained by millions of readers who invested real decades of their lives in these characters. Disney looked at all of it and said it didn't count.
I mean, yeah, to them it's practically
The fans looked right back and said, make something better first. They're still waiting. Subscribe for more stories like this.
I saw a really great,
I mean, what is there to say about this other than just man? Straight up man. It's so disappointing, it's practically not even funny at this point.
In 2014, Disney looked at 40 years of Star Wars storytelling.
Like, they straight up lack any originality. And the worst part is with how they underdelivered with the sequels. They're never going to continue things from there. They fumbled that hard that it's practically impossible to pick a story and go from there. That's how hard they fumbled.